All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you're having a great week. Today, we're here to talk about solutions to meet your business's HR needs. I'm Steph Hand, HR partner here at Let's. I oversee our HR efforts, as well as help other organizations with their HR strategy, and have been in the HR space for over 20 years.
I'm Chris Bouchard. I am the shareholder on our talent side. So our talent side, again, does placement, staffing in accounting, finance, HR, and office administration. Been in the industry for about 19 years.
Okay, so today's agenda, we will be talking through some of today's HR challenges and trends. We'll be looking at when should you be thinking about addressing HR or possibly doing more with your HR function. We'll talk about the role of HR today, and then we'll talk about some different solutions. So before we dive into anything, we do want to acknowledge that we have a wide variety of company sizes, industries, professionals, and different roles on the call today. So again, thanks to everyone for joining us. Some of you have HR professionals on your team or are the HR professional on your team. Some may be thinking about having someone join your team. And some of you may not plan to hire for HR, but are still needing some assistance or help or support. So we'll do our best to speak to all of you and hopefully come out with some new ideas. All right, well, we're going to start with, you can go back, Reagan. We're going to start with today's HR challenges. So I think it's fair to say that we have all been through a lot from a people and HR standpoint over the last 3 years, and that might be the understatement of a big understatement. So is anyone tired? There's a lot going on. The world is getting more complex, and so are people. So there's been some tough challenges and trends that we have all been handling over this time. And we've compiled some of those challenges, not only from things we have seen here at Let's, but also as we work with different clients and as Chris has worked with different candidates. So we thought we'd walk through these today to just talk about some of the different things we're all facing. So the first, of course, and it's not new to any of you, is finding qualified candidates in this unprecedented labor market. And this is a challenge that is faced, that all of us are facing. And we feel like it is enough of a challenge that we're going to dedicate our more time to it. So Chris is going to be speaking on that here in a few minutes. We'll be going in more depth on the recruiting side of things. One thing we're also seeing is workplace flexibility demands. People are really wanting to have some input in where they work, when they work, how they work. And, the hybrid model is still very much of interest to both candidates and employees. We're seeing remote situations declining a little bit. Would you say, Chris?
Yeah, the remote thing, I think we'll still see some of the bigger companies, especially in the Omaha area, that work 100% remote, but a lot of them have went back to the hybrid where they're having people in the office, some to keep the culture strong. But for small to medium-sized companies, a lot of them that are still in office are having to come up with a more flexible plan to really gain and retain those candidates out there, because it's just something that everybody got used to during COVID and are looking forward going forward.
And they know places will offer it, and so to be keeping up with our competition, we really have to think outside the box. And we understand that can be very difficult for different industries. It can really challenge us. So that's another thing we're all facing. Attendance and engagement. How do we motivate people to focus, to stay engaged, to work through some burnout, or to really just show up? And a lot of different industries are experiencing some challenges in this area. Outdated employee manuals and staying on top of compliance. We've talked to a lot of organizations that are really struggling to stay on top of compliance, or they might react and implement a new policy, but that policy never gets into a manual. And, let's face it, employee manuals are maybe not everyone's favorite project. So a lot of people are trying to kind of stay up to date. There's been a lot of changing legislation over the last few years as well. So that's definitely an area that is a challenge. Employee turnover frustrations. We're seeing a lot of that, of course, because people just really have a lot of options these days. And that has really created some challenges. I like to call this whack-a-mole. If you've been to the arcade or I don't know, any of those kinds of places, you played the whack-a-mole where you think you got one person hired and then, someone else leaves, and it's just this constant kind of game of trying to keep up, and you're in reactive mode. And so that can be really tough in this environment. Keeping up with compensation is very much on people's minds in terms of understanding market values of different positions you have in your organization, staying on top of inflation, trying to attract and retain people within reason, and trying not to go overboard from a compensation standpoint. So I know that is definitely on all of our minds. Customizing the employee experience. We often talk here at Lutz that one size fits one. One size does not fit all anymore when it comes to what an employee wants to experience. So we all are thinking about how do we create a meaningful employee experience from the second someone is recruited to hopefully the minute they retire, and all throughout that cycle. People want tailored career paths. They want great benefits, recognition, and all of this is going toward retaining individuals. So add to that generational differences and challenges in the workplace, and the list goes on. So this is definitely not a full list of challenges and trends that we're seeing in the HR space. But if you feel any of these, you are not alone. So that's why we want to bring this up. There's a lot going on, and it's in all likelihood, not just you. So let's turn our attention to talking a little more about recruiting, because this is something that the space has changed a lot.
Yeah.
So, Chris.
So we all know that all the candidates fell off the edge of the earth during COVID.
Where are they?
And it really did happen for multiple reasons. I mean, people took early retirement. We had 2 people working from home. Once they were forced to go back in the office, they decided sometimes one could stay at home and take care of the kids. It's cheaper for daycare. I mean, lots of different reasons, but it has created a huge shortage. And here in Nebraska, our unemployment rate's still hovering around 2.3%, which is really low. The national average is 3.6%. So I don't see this changing anytime soon. We have less kids going into colleges. The population is declining every year, which that's fine to think of, but it's really happening. So this is not something we're going to solve overnight, but I think we have to change with the times and really think outside the box to really get that top talent to come our way and want to join our company. So the first note on here is the emergence of employer branding. So really, companies are having to change to get their core values out there. So their mission statement. These things are really big to candidates. 83% of candidates surveyed out there said that they would leave the company they're with if the company made them an offer that had what they were looking for. So, and a lot of companies can explain that, their core values, their mission statement. A lot of companies can't. So they're doing that. They're getting it out there, doing it through social media, through their website, whatever it may be. But that should be part of any company going forward to really attract that top talent. And you got to live it. You got to breathe it. You got to have it early in the process of telling a candidate about yourselves, and then all the way through the process that you are really living that core values. Next is data-driven recruiting. So recruiting, we're all used to the old world. I'm going to really age myself here of putting an ad in a newspaper, and people would call you and apply to the point where it got to where everybody was using the job boards. And those really were the main way people were recruiting. And some companies still are doing that today. Job boards are a necessity. I think a very small percentage of top talent comes for those. It's either somebody that's usually really unhappy where they're at, they've been downsized out, they're moving to a new market. Those are the ones that are really using that. But there's data out there to tell you what's working and what's not. I love Google. It's the easiest way to kind of find that information, but something you should be looking at, because if it's not what if you're not getting the results from doing what you are today, you need to change. And that is a reoccurring thing in the 19 years I've been in the recruiting business, is changing with the economy, changing with the people, changing with the times. And that's never going to end. So I think we need to make sure we're all very flexible and open to change all the time. Relying on AI powered recruitment. So there are tools out there, whether that's applicant tracking system, whether that's through LinkedIn, that can help with your recruitment and make that process quicker, more efficient. And I'm a big fisherman, so I believe that the more lines you have in the water, your better chance of catching a fish. And with the AI powered recruitment, that's one line to use. Sourcing through your job boards is another line to use. Actual proactive recruiting is another one, which is the next thing we're going to talk about here. So the rise of the proactive recruiter. I think most of us are very busy in our companies, and whether it's HR or any other niche within our companies, but we've always been reactive, and we don't look to hire somebody until they leave. And the world today, with the shortage of candidates, you've got to build out a bench. And the only way you can do that is start thinking proactively. There are a lot of different ways you can do that. Probably the biggest and most effective way, and I'll give you my definitions of what I call sourcing and recruiting. Sourcing is running your ads, doing who do you knows, kind of the old school methodology of recruiting, which we still have to use. Proactive recruiting is going after passive candidates and building out a bench of candidates. So when you do have an opening, you have somebody at your fingertips that you can reach out to and hire. So the proactive recruiting starts in a lot of different ways. Larger organizations start doing that with the campuses, the trade schools, internship programs. There's a lot of different methodology there. Small to medium-sized companies could still do that, but all companies, no matter the size, can actually hire a proactive recruiter to do these things. And a proactive recruiter, to me, doesn't look at a resume. They're out on LinkedIn finding people with the exact skill set, industry experience, software experience, things of that nature, and building a relationship with them. It's usually not a, hey, I see you're out there, you have this background, do you want to work for us? It's not that simple. It's usually a no, I'm happy where I'm at. Tell them that you're going to be there for them. You build a relationship. You check in with them once in a while. You're still happy in your careers. Anything we can do to help you. You let them know there's other opportunities out there if they do have heartburn where they are to solve that. And that's even where you can start getting out there your mission statement and your core values and really let them know about those things. And a lot of times those people will come to you when they are unhappy at that time, or if they are actively looking, you can start building that database of candidates that you know are really good when you do have an opening that you go after. So that's a big change. Just here on our talent team through the COVID time, I would say we filled 60-70% of our roles prior to COVID through what I would call sourcing. The job boards, our database of candidates we already had in it, so on and so forth. Take that, probably the last 6 months, 60 to 70% of the candidates we fill now are through proactive recruiting. Talking to people that are actively in a role now, that are passive, that don't understand there could be something better out there for them. And we do this all day, every day. We've had to add 2 proactive recruiters to our team. They do nothing but go after those people. They don't look at resumes, and they build those relationships. And when those people are ready to make a change, or we have a role to really work on that fits what they're looking for or where their skill set is, we can run it past them and we're placing a lot of people that way. So it's a completely different way of thinking. I think that's going to be a continual growth as we keep going. It's just a different way of thinking, and we all got to get on board with that, or we're going to be in trouble as far as hiring goes.
If I may, we've used the analogy before of fishing versus hunting, right?
Yep.
And so I just mentioned this for those of you that are experiencing, you're putting the line out and putting that job posting out, and you used to have fish that came up to swim and say, me.
Right.
And now no one is coming. And so now you're having to go hunt them out. And so I just mentioned, because if you are experiencing that, you are not alone. That is what everyone is experiencing. So in all likelihood, it's not something you're doing wrong with your posting. It's just thinking outside the box to be more proactive.
Yep. And to your analogy, when I said putting more lines in the water, and different ways to think about it. If you don't have HR, this is really a challenge, or a recruiter on your team. You're probably having to outsource that, which is okay. Our service, the talent industry, whether that's direct hire or temporary staffing, is another avenue to look at. Most search firms are going to be contingent. So if you're working on a role on your own and you're not seeing the candidate flow or the talent that you're looking for, I would suggest you reach out to a search firm. They all have different niches. Ours are accounting finance. So if you're working on an accounting role and you're not seeing the talent you look at, reach out and dig deep into what you're looking for. We understand your culture, your personality, and we only present people that are going to be a fit for you, or that you're definitely going to want to interview. It's a great way to compare people you have on your own. I always say you may have a candidate on your own that you feel pretty good about, and I like to use the 1 to 10 scale, 10 being a great candidate, 1 probably don't need to move forward with. But if it's a 6 or a 7 and you feel like, oh, it's a tight market, maybe we should hire this person, get involved with the search firm, making sure you can compare. And after interviewing those candidates through the search firm, you may say, wow, we really have a good candidate here. Or you know what? This person's probably a 2 instead of a 6 or 7. They showed us an 8. And if it makes sense, it's an investment when you pay that fee to hire the right talent. So it's another avenue for you to go. It doesn't cost you anything unless you pay the fee to get them. And then the other side of it, it takes longer to find a candidate. So the staffing side of it, which is the temporary temp to hire, you can bring a candidate in if you don't have somebody in that position to keep you up and running, not to put other work on your other individuals on the team and overwork them. Sometimes that temporary could work out to be the right person. It's kind of the try it before you buy it, where both parties make sure they're on the same page. So that's another avenue for you to go. And I think it does help. The average time frame we take on a search, if we're able to help, is about 6 to 7 weeks before that person starts in a role. So it's a process. And the reason it's a process is because we're dealing with mainly employed candidates that we're recruiting. And the time you go through the process, make an offer, they give their notice, it's a 6 or 7 week process. So sometimes a temp is a great strategy to plug that gap. It's there that they can stick around and help people as well. So utilizing a search firm, I think, is a really good thing. Other key things in the recruiting today that I think are important to remember: speed. A lot of us used to have a mentality of, oh, I'll do a phone screen and then I'll bring them in for a face-to-face, and then I'm going to have them meet one of the hiring managers, and then we'll bring them back in to meet the executives and get a tour. That process, you're going to lose that candidate. So if a candidate's interviewing for a role, the chances are they're interviewing for 3 or 4 roles, and it becomes speed. I always say time kills all deals. And in our world we're in right now, and I can tell you this happens, we coach clients on this, but everybody's got to get out of their comfort zone and change to make that move quicker. So speed's a very big, important piece of it. Make your best offer going forward. So we used to live in a world where you could make an offer and then they come back and say, oh, I want more. And then you negotiate that and it goes back and forth. If they've got 2 or 3 deals on their plate, they don't want to play that game. So you got to come up with your best offer going forward, make it attractive. Talent's hard to find. And then once you get them, we got to retain them. But making that right offer up front is a big thing. And then doing the extras. Once you get acceptance from a candidate, you got to let them know that you really want them there. You got to maybe take them to lunch after you get them hired before they start. You got to stay in touch with them. You got to woo. Yes, you got to woo them. You can send flowers. I've seen companies do a lot of different things. I'm not a flower guy myself, but you can do different things and get the HR onboarding process started early. And again, reiterate your core values and how important they are, and make it a great experience for when they roll over. That 2-week period when they got to give their notice is super important to stay in touch with them and keep that rolling to the day that they start, and then keep them happy afterwards.
So part of the employee experience, I would say, that 2 weeks, the second you get in contact.
Yep, until they start and onward. So.
Right, thanks, Chris. So with all these, challenges and trends and things that are going on, how do we know when to do more with our HR function, or to address it, or to grow the HR piece of our business? So we had a few questions to talk through and things for you to consider, which you may already be considering. But the first is, who is currently handling the HR function in your organization? If you're smaller, it may be someone who's taking on the accounting function. It may be the office manager or an owner. I mean, it really depends, but a lot of times you may have someone that is kind of trying to wear half the hat, and that can be really challenging. And to think about, are they really trained to handle the HR matters? Do they have time to handle it? And do they like to handle it? Are they the right fit to handle HR? And I think sometimes we think, well, it's just a people thing. So you can do it, or you could do it. And you might be in a position where that has to happen just based on your size, but it is a profession. It does require a specific skill set. I know if I was handling and just had to wear part of the accounting hat, it would be a very dangerous situation. Anyway, these are things to think through, right? In terms of who is handling it. If you have someone that's not trained in it, maybe time to reach out and use some resources. Are you currently operating in a reactive or proactive manner when it comes to your HR? And Chris alluded to this as well. A lot of times we are working in a reactive mode. We're kind of firefighting. I've had a number of clients say they just feel like they're a little bit on a gerbil wheel, trying to kind of handle all of the things that are coming at them, whether it's an employee issue or someone that needs to be hired or someone who has just left. So how do you flip that to a more strategic situation? Do you have a good handle on employment legislation that affects your company size as you grow? Around that 50 space, 50 employee space. There's a lot of employment legislation that changes. So, sometimes we hear people say this keeps people up at night because they don't know what they don't know when it comes to compliance and, all of the laws that are affecting their employees. As you proactively think about how to retain employees, a lot of times we get focused on recruiting, but we don't always think about if I'm proactive with retaining people, I don't have as many people to recruit. So sometimes the recruiting is the reactive part, but the retaining is the proactive part that we really need to focus on to not feel like we're on that wheel. Are you experiencing any significant turnover? Are there trends there? Could be an indicator that it's time to really look at your HR function. Are you, taking a look at your pain points and what those are, taking a look at growth? Are you in growth mode? Are you about to be in growth mode? So those are some things. And also, do you have a clear idea of what HR can do for your organizations? I think a lot of times companies avoid addressing HR in a more proactive way because they really don't understand exactly what an HR resource could do for them, whether that's hiring someone or outsourcing HR. So is there anything you'd add to this, Chris?
No, I mean, and one big part I'll add to that is the culture piece too. And I know we're going to talk more about this. I mean, they're your rah, build your culture, enforce the culture, keep people happy. It's a big role. We deal a lot with smaller organizations that never had HR, and Steph can talk firsthand about this here at our company. She was our first HR professional hired years ago. Everybody kind of thought when you don't have HR, it's the necessary evil you need for compliance. But to Steph's point, all these bullet points up here are all important. They take more time than anybody can think of. And without a true HR professional, these are always going to be just fires that you're always working on. So,
and the employee really does have a lot of power right now. We're just in that kind of situation. So we really have to think about how to prioritize the HR people. So let's look at, Reagan, if you can flip to the next slide here. We do want to make sure people really understand, and I know we have some HR professionals, so I wish we could all be here to talk about what you do, but for those of you that don't have an HR person on site, just want to make sure that we talked through today's HR. So unfortunately, we're still fighting a few old school stereotypes. If you would go to any sitcom, I feel like anytime HR comes up, it's definitely not in the most positive light. So kind of interesting. But so this just kind of takes a look at traditional HR, for example, was about execution and order and control and keeping things, under control. And that is still the case. We can definitely help with execution and keeping things organized. And but today we really are focused on helping prepare people for change. And Chris talked about that. That is the one thing we can expect, that everything is going to change and continue to change. And so an HR person or resource can really help you and your employees be adaptable, innovative, prepare for thinking outside the box, and to create different efficiencies in your organization. We are definitely known at times to be the office cop, which that's the last thing I think I would ever want to be. So, HR is also, shouldn't say also, they are instead the coaches, mentors, and thought leaders of the organization. They can help people develop. They can help people find that meaning. You talked a lot about making sure that core values and meaning are found. People are really looking for that. That is something we can really help with. We can help increase performance, keep the pulse of the culture and the pulse on people. Traditional HR really used to be focused on payroll, which is part of HR for some organizations, compensation benefits, which is more transactional work, and that is definitely things that we still handle as HR folks, but the employee experience is really where we can do some of our best work in that strategic, aspect. And we keep throwing out the term employee experience. That just refers to the full life cycle of an employee, again, from the day they are recruited to the day they are retired or an alumni. And at each stage in the employee experience, there is something different that people need. So this is super important and required if we really plan to attract and retain the best people. Traditional HR would execute strategy. Today we can shape and help lead strategy. If people are our most important asset, you definitely need resources that understand people. And so that is really important. Behind with technology, hopefully we're not still having that stereotype. We're fully on board with the technology piece. Sometimes we've been seen as in the past as a passive service oriented department. Today, a more proactive people management. You can take the people items off of owners' plates. We can help them think about what is important with the strategy, and they can focus on what they do best. And then finally, traditional HR would focus on the organization of the business, and today's HR focuses on the business of the organization. HR folks are business-minded, business savvy, and they can help you create and carry out the business strategy that you're hoping for. So,
and
any other comments, Chris?
no, and companies' thought process is, I hate to say it this way, a lot of people always thought of it as expenses. And traditional HR
Yeah,
was
that's
a
right.
necessary evil and
Yeah.
an expense to the company. And it's quite opposite of that. It is an asset to the company. It's an investment that's only going to make you better. And it takes companies' experience to see it, where they can go forward with it and really have that thought process. So it's changed a lot. It's going to continually change. And I think the biggest challenge for an HR professional is allowing their leadership to know what they can do and why they need to be part of it to really fix a lot of the problems they have.
All right, we're going to take a few minutes here for a polling question. So to be eligible to receive CPE credit, if you could please, you must actually answer this poll question. And then to request a CPE certificate, you can email Reagan, and her email address is listed there. We'll take a few minutes to do that now. Great, thank you. We were talking there in our quick break, that in addition to Chris's comments, I think sometimes when in smaller organizations, when you have not added an HR resource, whether that is outsourced HR, which we're about to talk about, or an HR individual, there can be a fear of, what's going to happen? Could this person change our culture in a negative way if it becomes too formal? I think there is that fear there. At least I know that was maybe a fear when I started here, and I think an HR person is going to protect the culture. They can, if you hire the right HR person, or if you hire the right HR resource, they are going to be, they're going to be reflective of your culture. They're going to help you kind of maintain that and enhance it.
And hone it to be
And
better.
hone it, yes.
Yeah.
And chances are there might be a little chaos going on. Because if you're in a reactive mode, there is going to be a little chaos. So you may need just a little bit of, of that organization, but not too much that you feel like
that great family-oriented culture is changed. So, all right, just had to get that in. So we want to talk about some solutions for organizations at different sizes. And we're going to use 50 people just as a general threshold, but that's more of a target or a guide. A lot of things you'll read may say that, you may want to think about hiring an HR resource when you have up to 50 employees, or sometimes up to 75 you may see. And that all depends on your industry, your growth plans, your complexities from a people standpoint. So we're just using that as a general target. So typically when we work with companies that are under 50 employees, HR is usually being handled by someone in the accounting role, or like we said, maybe an administrative individual, or even an owner. And someone is trying to get by with figuring out the HR piece. And really this challenge can start as early as 5 employees or up to 10, because, if you're starting a business, you're trying to think of policies and procedures and structure that will impact your employees as you grow the organization. So one solution to consider is outsourced HR. And so this is using a third party to handle all or some of your HR functions. So keep in mind, this can include anything from basic HR day-to-day tasks like onboarding or new employee paperwork or benefit administration, up to HR strategy. So that might be thinking about your recruiting strategy and how you're going to think outside the box to be more proactive. It could be thinking about your retention strategy. So this is, the full gamut. There are a lot of options when you think about outsourced HR. Some other examples are listed there: onboarding and offboarding, benefit administration, recruiting. You can outsource compliance pieces or all of the compliance, employee relations, training. So we're going to talk about some of the benefits of outsourced HR, but those are a few examples. So there are a lot of benefits of HR outsourcing, and Chris, jump in at any point here. But there's definitely can be a cost saving. So a lot of stats say that businesses that outsource their HR functions can save more than 50% off the cost of hiring a full-time, in-house HR staff. Now, sometimes there are going to be situations where you definitely want the person on site. So you really have to weigh that kind of depending on the number of employees you have, and again, the different things you're dealing with. You have access to a wide range of HR skills from HR experts. You're not limited to one individual's skill set. You have the wide range, again, from working in the very technical HR aspects up to the people who are great with culture or great with ideas and strategy. So that can be a benefit to outsourcing HR. This can definitely help take your HR function from reactive to proactive. Experts can help you build that infrastructure and process for different things so that you can have more consistency and more predictability, kind of taking out some of that chaos that you might be feeling as you're, just trying to firefight and handle all the things that come up. And a lot of these individuals that are helping with outsourcing have had a lot of reps in the HR world too, and so they have a lot of experiences to draw off on. And some of us love to talk about these unusual HR things we experience. There's a lot of interesting things that happen in the HR world. So having a sounding board can also be a really great benefit to companies outsourcing their HR, just having other HR professionals to talk through about unusual circumstances. We can also help stay on top of compliance. So according to a study I read recently, about 3/4 of individuals that are kind of handling HR in a more informal or ad hoc way are really worried about accuracy and compliance issues. And that is something that is keeping them up at night. So you can outsource things like, your employee manual and making sure that is up to date, and, different policies, making sure that you're staying on top from either just the compliance piece, but also from the competitive piece of things. A lot of times, when we're working with clients, we think about the balance of compliance and culture. When we're dealing with issues, sometimes the compliance answer isn't the best answer. Sometimes there is an answer that is a little bit different, that kind of is more culture oriented. So being able to work with experts on finding that good balance can be important. And then, of course,
helping to retain employees. And that is key. Again, just giving you the comfort of knowing that someone is helping you look at that full employee experience from every angle and every different aspect of HR. And there are a lot of aspects, from benefits to training to communication to safety to risk to, recruiting and so forth. So having that extra eye and just remembering that happy employees is going to equal happy customers. If you can really treat your employees well, keep them and keep that consistency, you're definitely going to see that benefit from a customer and client standpoint.
Yeah,
What
and
would you add to that,
I would add efficiency. So
Yeah, definitely.
if we go into a company that doesn't have HR, and the first question we say, well, who's doing your HR? Well, the controller's doing insurance and maybe doing the benefits administration, and they have their payroll person trying to do the onboarding. It could be all over the board.
Yeah.
And what it does is it brings in an expert, of different talents that we can bring and free them up to really do their job, where your payroll person can really do payroll and do it on a timely basis. And your controller can really do the month end on a timely basis and things of that nature. So it takes stuff off their plate that they probably don't like to do and that they're not experts at, and allow somebody to be experts at it and allow them to be an expert for the role they were hired to do. So that's a big one we see. And it's funny when you ask who's doing HR and they, if we're with a team within that company, it's like, well, I do this and I do this, and nobody would say they're probably doing it well.
Yeah. And it'd be hard to, right? It'd be hard to if you weren't trained in it, but also if you were spread so thin to try to
Right.
to get to it.
So consider hiring an HR professional to join your team. I mean, yeah, over 50. A lot of you on this call may be way bigger than that. And you may have a big org chart within your HR team with a lot of specialists underneath it. But for that company that's growing and maybe got to this point, first, you got to consider the level of the individual you need. So, we can help figure that out. One thing we also do is an HR assessment where we come in and say, all right, what are you guys doing now? Figure out who's doing it. You can kind of come up with that. So you may need just an entry level person, like we'll call it an HR generalist or an HR specialist that's doing benefits administration, some onboarding, their employee relations, they're helping with the basics. And one thing we suggest then is you could hire an outsourced firm to do more of the coaching and development with that person to grow them as you grow. That is definitely something that can happen. Some companies maybe that are 120 employees and doing it maybe need a little bit stronger person where they need an HR manager to come in. Somebody that's touched a little bit more, got some strategy for them, but at the same time, if they need, they could use an outsource to help with an employee relation at a high level that they don't know how to deal with, or just have those questions. As Steph mentioned earlier, anybody in HR that's probably on this call uses a phone a friend.
Yeah.
And a phone a buddy and share experiences and use that. Well, you can get that from HR consulting for these first time HR people with you. But you can get as experienced as you want or less experienced. It depends again on your situation. If you're a growing company, you might start out with a generalist. You might have again, use an outsourced consulting firm on HR to help you, but you may get to a point where you say, we're at 250 people. I need a HR director now, and you might need somebody underneath them to do recruiting. It's going to be all over the board. So it's based on each company. And I think having that assessment and what do we really need and what do we have today? Like a search firm like us can help you figure that out. It's probably one of the roles we fill most often with a company is we'll go out and meet with them. Who's doing HR today? What do you need done? And then sometimes they don't even know what an HR professional does and what all the pieces are. Sometimes payroll falls under HR. Sometimes payroll falls under accounting. It's different for each company. But really do the assessment, I think, to figure out what that initial level of person is and use some experts to help you figure that out.
When we talk about a generalist, that's usually what we recommend when you're hiring your first person,
Right.
Because that is someone who has a knowledge in a little bit of all of the areas of HR.
Exactly.
And as you grow that, as you grow your team, you can start to develop and build specialists, maybe a specialist in training and development or a specialist in recruiting. But
Yep.
would you say typically, we suggest that first is going to have overall general knowledge about HR because you're going to need them to know a little bit of everything. Yeah. For that employee experience.
The titles are titles,
Yeah, that's true.
Generalist in a big company, probably deals a lot more with a lot more.
Mhm.
They're like an HR manager for a small company. So
Coordinator.
right,
or-
it's understanding that and also understanding what you're going to have to invest to pay this person to have the right person in there. And again, use your tools around you, whether that's a search firm or a consulting company or whatever it may be, to figure that out.
We can also talk through, as you were saying, some people who are teetering around this size, it is hard to know if, when to hire someone,
Right.
right? Or if. And so just talking through that can be really helpful as you go forward.
And then the bigger companies here, as you grow, then you start layering in the different niches with underneath that, whether it's employee relations or it could be a recruiting department where you have a talent leader with recruiters underneath them. It's just based on the growth of your company and then really figuring out what's your strategy going forward too, to be proactive to make sure you get those people in place at the right time. So solutions, benefits on an on-site HR professional. Sets you up for growth. I think we've kind of talked about that already, but the importance of an HR professional in there, I don't think a company realizes it until they get them in there and realize how much they can take off everybody's plate, how much value they bring from the get-go of recruiting a candidate to getting them onboarded to keeping them happy and excited and mentored and build the culture of your company. There's so much there. So it really does set you up for growth. Ensures you have an on-site employee advocate. So if you don't have an HR professional, when somebody's upset, they're either not going to come to you and they're going to quit, or you're going to feel like they're probably a royal pain because they're coming to you to have a question about their benefits, about a raise. I mean, it could be lots of different things. So yeah, an employee, maybe it's a question, just they have a personal issue they need to get off their chest. But an on-site person, eventually you need to have one for sure, and then grow the levels. And again, use an outside consulting firm to help with a lot of things to coach and develop that HR professional to handle those things. HR professionals live, breathe, and models your desired culture. This is probably the biggest thing today with what we're seeing with the younger generation of candidates coming out. They are looking for different things than what I was when I was going out. I just believed in working and you did whatever you're told. It's different now. They believe in work-life balance. They believe in casual work attire. They believe in all these different things, and they can help model your culture, keep your culture growing, and really deliver that culture to everybody and keep it strong and keep it changing as things change. All things HR can be streamlined to this individual. Again, it's a big package. The term generalist cracks me up because there's so many things that are involved, and it's different in each company. It could be recruiting, benefits administration. They could be working on your handbook, compliance, training. I mean, it's so much there. But again, it takes things off everybody else's plate to allow them to focus on what they need to. And you have one champion that's handling all those things. And then we talked about the proactive recruiting. Can be a focus. It must be a focus, in my opinion. And if you don't have an HR professional that's on site, a lot of it starts there where they can recruit themselves and advertise. They work with the outside recruiting firms or staffing agencies and keep that process under one umbrella, if that makes sense.
Got a couple of things to add to that. And one is, I think people like you were talking about, they're maybe worried about the cost and the investment of it. But just if you think about turnover costs alone,
Yep.
If you can hire this person to help you prevent turnover, if that's an issue for you, it can more than make up for that. And just that piece of it,
Oh, big time. Yeah.
I've also had clients say, well, will this person have enough to do? I just don't know. I just don't think maybe there's just not enough to do. Yes, they will. And I don't even know your organization, but I could guess they would have enough to do because you're probably seeing all the reactive things they can do. You may not be seeing all the proactive things that they should be doing or that you should be doing to be able to retain and kind of flip again from that kind of feeling like you're on a gerbil wheel to feeling in control of the people aspects of your organization. So it's also interesting to me, a lot of times people will hire an HR person and then it's kind of that adage of you paint one wall and the others look dirty. You focus on making something really great and all of a sudden you're like, well, we need to do that for that too, and so
sometimes you may find yourself hiring a second person sooner than you thought because of the value that an HR professional can bring to you. Clearly, I'm biased. But, and then, of course, solutions for any size. There are a lot of things you can do from a HR consulting standpoint. So HR consultants can offer a wide range of services from project assistance to HR strategy. We've just listed a few examples, which I'm sure many of you know, but don't want to make any assumptions here. So a consultant could help you develop an employee survey to identify some underlying HR issues or areas or pain points that really need to be addressed. And a lot of times you may be too close to the issue to really know that there is one. And so sometimes a survey or an outside person can really help you see things that maybe people aren't willing to tell you because of just being, knowing that they don't want to, upset you, or just because you're too close to it. They can provide advice on managing employees and just general HR management, being a sounding board, help you establish a policy, let's say, for example, a PTO policy, and guidance for how to implement that. They might even provide communication templates that you can use and take some of that writing and communication off of your plate. Facilitating a strategic planning meeting might be another example, or providing ideas for starting an internship program, doing a Clifton Strengths Finder facilitation and coaching, or benefits and compensation statement. There's a lot. The opportunities are endless.
And like one thing I didn't bring up earlier was
Yeah.
DEI strategy.
Yeah.
It's a trend. I had it in the slide and didn't bring it up. We can help with that strategy going forward. It's important to a lot of the candidates looking, and it's something every company needs to consider as well.
As far as the benefits of HR consulting, this can provide support, to an existing HR team member. If you do have an HR person on site, I know what it's like to be a one
on paper.
Yeah, that's right. A one-person HR show, and that is really hard. So if you're on the call, hang in there, because that is tough. And so if you need extra support, HR consultants could step in to just help you with a bigger project that you might have, or again, to be a sounding board. Or if you don't have someone on site, we can provide that support to you. So HR consultants also offer an outside perspective, as we talked about, from someone who is skilled in the area. Again, sometimes we're a little too close to things to really have kind of that objective sight or vision. They can help you address immediate pain points until you determine your HR strategy. So if you are thinking about, we really need to do something with HR, but we don't know what that is right now, but we've got this burning issue, an HR consultant could come in and just at least help you firefight some of those, immediate concerns that you have, so you can think a little more clearly on what you want to do from a strategy standpoint going forward. So we hope this helps, provide you some ideas in terms of some different solutions depending on your size, again, growth, just the complexities, your industry, the type of employees you have, that will all go into the equation. LETS does provide recruiting services, outsourced HR, outsourced mentoring and coaching, and HR consulting. So if you have any questions or needs, we would love for you to reach out and see how you might be able to help enhance your HR efforts. We will open it up to any questions if you have any right now. We realize you may not want to send them to the group, so you can also get in touch with us.
Yeah, our contact information, give us a call, shoot us an email. Again, I wouldn't ever consider myself an expert at everything by any means, but we're living and breathing this every day, and can give you advice and kind of give you some of the pains we went through and maybe some of the solutions we found that have worked.
Wait for just a couple. Oh. Yes, you have our emails in there? That might be, can we just put our emails in there, Megan, or what do you suggest? Email is great, or
Either one, yeah.
Either one, yes.
She'll put our email addresses in there, and if you shoot an email, I can definitely give somebody a phone call back, or Steph can, and or we can answer through email.
Your preference. I think that another thing to think about as we're just kind of seeing if anyone has any questions is it can feel overwhelming. I know we talked about a lot of challenges, but I'm sure there's a lot more that you're doing well that you don't realize. Obviously, your people are
are with you for a reason. And so I would just say, not thinking about having to address everything all at once, you know, just
Right.
making sure you're figuring out and how to prioritizing and what to address, you know, first, I guess.
Yep.
It can be a little
And it's
Still overwhelming.
ongoing and changing. Yeah.
All the
changing.
time.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's-
that's
it's
right.
Ongoing, pick your major pain points and take them on one at a time.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, if there are no questions, again, feel free to reach out to us, and we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules today. And you know, we wish you luck in the HR
Yeah.
realm. So
Let's go conquer the world.
that's right. Have a great day.
Thanks.